Hello YouTube, welcome back campaigners. This is Campaign Terrain and I am your host, That Guy Cross. I'm in video 2 of 3 where I am making a Woodland Shrine for the Tabletop Crafters Guild build for January. This ends February 13th and I have to have all of this completed by then. Last week you saw me build the shrine that's going to sit right here on this little piece here. This is the land that the shrine is going to go on, and this is what I'll be showing you today. And then next week I'll be showing you the foliage and shrubbery that goes with it, and that will complete it all. During that third video, I'll also be showing the final reveal of the entire completed piece. There'll be a couple of beauty shots of this piece at the end, but this is what we're doing today. So come along for the ride. There's going to be a bump here. During the bump, please hit some of these links over here. Please hit some of the links down there. All of them would really help me out. So I would really like it if you'd do that for me. Also, it's coming to my attention that a lot of people that watch these videos aren't subscribed. Please do. I put things out on a sporadic basis, and so I won't be pestering you all the time, but I try to bring things that are going to inspire you to build stuff on your own. So, that said, see you in just a second, and thanks for coming to Campaign Terrain. Time to build from the ground up, so to speak. I've chosen a 15 by 15 square. That's going to fit in with some other terrain I have. It actually shrinks a little bit during the trimming of this, but that's generally where I started out. I'm also choosing where to place my hills, and that white piece you see is the platform that the shrine itself will be placed on. The ground will all be painted browns and grays to make dirt and rock, except for that platform. It will only be gray. It's going to be a stone slab. Here I'm simply rounding it off to give it a more natural appearance. Don't want any straight lines in something that's supposed to be natural stone. Here, being careful not to cut myself, I'm using the blade to do a simple slice and rip effect. Ripping those pieces out gives a more natural appearance to the rock. To place down my multiple levels, I'm using a hot glue gun. Typically I use my hot glue gun on low temp for several different reasons, but since I'm spreading it over such a large area here, it really does need to be high temp so it's still melted and gooey when it goes on. Continuing the same hot glue technique for the topmost portions of the hill and for the slab that the shrine will sit on. While the hill itself is made of 1-inch XPS foam, you'll notice that this platform I'm holding is made of 3 layers of peeled foam core. That's foam core with the paper torn off. Foam core inside is also XPS, it's just a different style. You could use anything here. XPS, EPS, cardboard, cardstock, anything you want. Just something to make the little mound. I'm going to need a more gradual slope so that the figures can stand on the hill and not fall off as they go up the different levels. I'm actually going to create an entire ramp, but it's going to be a stair-stepped ramp. There will be stairs on this, not just a plain ramp. Here I'm cutting it to fit at the top. I will be cutting this off at an angle, and then I will be extending that down into the ground portion. Here I've chosen to use my janky old homemade hot wire tool, and you could use a hot wire tool if you've got one. You could also use a hot wire knife, soldering iron, knife, saw, whatever works to get to a lower level or the shape you want. Here I'm just trying to clear a bunch of foam out quickly. I will actually go back and carve the stairs in with some knives. You'll see that in just a moment. Whilst cutting my stairs, I noticed that I was going to have a level a little too high at the bottom, so I'm cutting a last stair that protrudes out a bit. This allows for one smaller stair for the figures to fit on the bottom. As it turns out, I also think it looks better. It stands a little bit forward from the 15 by 15 footprint, but I think it works in this situation. Since this last stair was a bit of an add-on, I noticed that it was not going to be particularly strong, so you'll see here that I'm putting some toothpicks through it off camera because I'm a consummate professional to hold it in place so that it's more rigid and sturdy. I hate to break one of those off right after going through all the trouble of building this. Here I'm using some scraps to fill in some gaps, make them look like little boulders along the side, also giving it a bit of a railing. It's just to give it a little more natural, more realistic look when the final piece is complete. Just stairs showing up out of the ground would be a little strange. Here I've stabbed some toothpicks into the ground. Each of those is where one of my pathway markers is going to be. Those are the small posts that I made in my last video. You'll see that I haven't glued the last ones in just to show you. All I'm doing is lifting it up, sticking the nozzle in, filling it with glue, and placing the toothpick back in. Each of these will be trimmed short, just short enough that the post will slide all the way down on it without interference. Now that the posts are in place and trimmed off, it's time to fill in the gaps so that there's no spacing between the pieces of foam. I like to use this pink spackle, or filler if you're in the UK, and I just like that I can see where I placed it and that it turns white to let me know that it's dried. There's no real rhyme or reason here. You'll see that I smear it on, and then I'll come back in a bit and shape it with a brush and various other tools. You can see those laying there in the foreground.
You may have noticed that I switched from those clear plastic gloves to these nitrile rubber ones. If you have the option, I definitely suggest the rubber gloves. They're much easier to use. They're not as friendly with the spackle, and don't try to pull it along behind your finger as you move away. It goes where you put it with these. Perfectly acceptable to use small tools to get the spackle down into the nooks and crannies. If you need anything that gets it down in there is good. You can always texture it after the fact. Here I'm trying to use the spackle as sort of a glue to hold some of the rocks and boulders into place. I actually don't suggest this. I suggest putting the boulders where you want with some hot glue beforehand and then coming in and spackling after. This did end up working, but it was kind of hard to do at the moment. And here I am using that brush to texture the spackle, get rid of any clear gloved smear marks, anything that looks like a man-made object. I want to go ahead and make this as natural as possible. For a lot of my texture, I use some standard sand from the hardware store. I sort it into large aggregate, medium aggregate, and a very fine sand. I have just 3 different dollar store sifters for this with different size holes in them. And so I will go through the stages of these. I like to apply the larger rocks first, the medium rocks second, and then the sand at the end. That allows for a more natural look to it. You'll notice that I don't use much of these. I only place them here and there, very near to the other rock walls. I want it to look as if they are actually part of the rock and not randomly strewn about the landscape. Here I'm using my standard base coat that I call the Boom, and it's just 50-50 PVA and paint. I'm going to use brown for everything flat and level, as if it's the ground or dirt, and I'm going to end up using gray for everything that's vertical like a stone. I'll also be putting the gray on the shrine slab where my hand is right now, and I will be using it on the stairs as well. And now a little movie magic. Once all the paint's on, while it's still wet since it's got the glue in it, I'm going to go ahead and begin to attach those various aggregates, the large, the medium, and the fine sand. The glue and the paint will hold those in place for me. Once all of that is dried, I'm using a 50-50 mix of my white boom and my dark gray boom so that I can lighten up the rocks with a fairly heavy overbrush. I'm not going to cover up all of the dark gray because I do want the darker shadows in there, but this is going to be a pretty thorough coverage. As you can see, I'm being fairly thorough here. I want this in all of the nooks and crannies of the rock. I'm not touching the brown dirt portions with this at all, but I do want to cover all of the rock with the gray. On this portion, it's hard to tell from the picture, but I'm actually using a much lighter gray. This one is more of a dry brush. This is just to hit the highlights, bring up the richness of the texture. This will all be covered again with a lighter edge highlight after I clear coat it. I went ahead and used a spray clear coat off camera. You want to use a matte on that, not a gloss, and make sure that everything is thoroughly painted before you spray that, as it can melt the foam. Once that's completed, I wanted a wash on here, and I went ahead and used the one I call bath water, which is just recycled paint rinse water. I got this idea from the Try Hard boys over at Try Hard Games. I'll put a link up in the upper right hand corner for their channel. Be liberal with this wash. You want to get it on every single rock. It does not hurt at all if you get it on the ground as well. So I went ahead and pretty much painted everything. You can be as thick and heavy as you want with this because it's going to fill in all of the nooks and crannies and give it a really good shadow. You really want to just slather this on. Plus, it's recycled paint water. Why not use it? left the wash to dry for a couple hours under a fan. That seemed to work pretty well. Once I was happy that it was dry, I came back in for a final highlight. This is a pure white boom over this, and it's just to get the very top edges of the stone to make them really pop out.
So there you go. That's how you build a pretty epic scale hill to put the Woodland Shrine on. I hope you've enjoyed this. Going to be a couple beauty shots right after this that just show you some of this hill from different angles. And next week we'll be adding shrubbery, probably other shrubbery, some grasses, and the trees. Can't have it be a woodland shrine without, woods. Not to mention we'll be adding the shrine and the pillars along the pathway. So I hope you come back for that. That'll be a video 3 out of 3 for this. So be looking for that. Also be checking out the Tabletop Grafters Guild. They're on Facebook, plus they have their own website. And you'll see a lot of amazing builds from a lot of amazing builders for this Woodland Shrine build. Some really great stuff to be seen there. So go check that out. Big shout out to everybody that's involved in it, really. So thanks for coming to Campaign Terrain. I'm your host, That Guy Cross. Please hit some of these links. Please hit some of those links. I would really appreciate it. And I'll see you next time. I love you. And until next time, I wish you luck in your campaign. Thanks for coming.